Hello, this is Lars and welcome back. Today we're going to talk a bit about RemoteTech. Now, I did make a small tutorial for the basics of RemoteTech and people wanted a tutorial that covered more stuff. So I think we're going to go back to the basics here first and have a look at a small diagram I made that shows you what the basics are. So you can see a blue planet here, and how it works in RemoteTech is that, well, the main node of your relay network is at the KSC, the Kerbal Space Center. Now, you need to be in contact with that to be able to fly a drone or a probe. So you need either a manned mission or you need contact back to base. Now, how you achieve that is basically you need to shoot up some satellites. And yeah, if you have a look at the diagram here, you can see the blue planet with the mission control marked in red. And the pink thing there on the right of the planet is an orbiting spaceship of some sort. Now, the big point here is that you need some sort of relaying. Connection back to KSC, and all the different nodes must be in line of sight with each other. So if you can see the gray thingy just above the KSC there, that's one of the four orbiting satellites in this diagram. And as you can see, the pink spaceship is actually in contact with KSC through two of the satellites there. And that's basically what makes it work. This is the most basic setup. 4 satellites at an appropriate height. So it doesn't really matter if it's in a geosynchronous orbit or not. The important thing is that the orbital period is more or less the same, or it should be exactly the same, but you do have some leeway. But try to get it in within a few seconds if you don't have to do a lot of maintenance on them. Now, of course, the first launch is going to be, well, it's going to be manned. You need a manned mission the first time you get one of these into orbit. You can just go up there, push it into a good orbit, and then go back down. You might have to do that a couple of times. If you time it just right, you might be able to get away with doing it with a probe. Maybe not the first one, but at least the second one is doable. It depends also if you do a geosynchronous or not. Now, there are good things and bad things about doing a geosynchronous orbit. And the good thing is that you can get away with you can get away with shooting up the second one if you place it right. So as you can see here, if the one straight over the mission control was actually geosynchronous, that would mean that I had until more or less the next the satellite down to the right there until I had any problems with it, because I would still be in contact. Now, there is these are all basically with the assumption that you have the omnidirectional antennas. That means that they have a 360-degree angle. They are usually not that efficient at long range. They won't actually be able to throw the signal very long, but they are easier to deal with when you're up close. Now, the other type is the long-range satellites, and you're going to need them the long-range antenna, and you're going to need them if you want to shoot something to another planet. And we're going to cover those in a bit, but I think it's time we have a look at some parts. Now, there's one more thing, of course, we need to talk about, and that is solar power. And the antennas use electricity, so you need solar power and battery power to keep going. Now, I usually just assume that if you take the orbital period and you divide that by 3, So if you have for example, from a geosynchronous orbit, you would have an orbital period of 6 hours. That's how long it actually takes you to go around. And if you take 2 hours and your satellite uses 1 unit of fuel or electricity per second, just staying there, then you would need battery powered. You would need almost 8,000, just to be sure. 8,000. No, 8,000. Yeah, 8,000 units of electrical power to be able to last through the dark side of the planet you're orbiting, or moon. And of course, the moon is a bit different though. But we don't really need to get into that. Basically, the different sizes gives different orbital periods at different altitudes, so you have to kind of just check the orbital period. That's the important thing there. And so you need 8,000 units of power, and you need to be able to fill that battery up and maintain your antenna while you're in the sun, and that's for about 4 hours. So in 4 hours you need to be able to recharge it. Now it's pretty easy. Just if you use 1 unit per second, try to generate at least 4, then you should be safe. I'd probably go up to 6 maybe, just because I always like to have some margins. And yeah, I think that's enough of the simple theory here, and I think you should have it by now. So let's go look at some parts. So now we're in the VAB, and these are all stock parts. Of course, we're going to pick the simplest little thing here, the Stay Putnik. That's a good starter thing, and probably the probe you'll have to deal with when you start out in career mode at least. And so let's see, this one takes a 1.7 electric charge per minute, and that's not that bad. But let's look at some antennae first. So if you want just like an omni thing, you can see here, this thing is the easiest, simplest one, the Reflectron. The range is actually only 500 kilometers, and that's a line of sight, but it doesn't really use any charge. Now, this is probably not going to be enough to do anything really fancy, because 500 kilometers, it's okay to like have a rover that's close to a relay in a base or something, but taking anything bigger out for spin, it's not going to work. It is a good thing to have a Reflectron on any unmanned launches though, because then you don't need to enable anything first. Now the default antenna you get is this, the Communitron. Now this has a 2,500 kilometer range and is pretty cheap to run. You can see, you can get, because it has 0.26 charges per second, you can actually get away with having 2 of the smallest, cheapest solar panels and still be able to do this, as long as they're both angled against the sun, of course. You might need more because they're not tracking. And if you think about it, 0.26 charges a second, that's basically around 15-16 charges a minute. And then for a 2-hour thing, you would need a couple of hundred charges of electricity total. And that's for the blackout around Kerbin in geosynchronous. It's probably a bit less, but I always do the 1 to 3. So 1/3 of the orbital period is the blackout time. And you can see this battery pack is actually enough to keep this going. Now, if we have these solar panels on top, 2 of them, because then we're good. And these they give way more than we need, but having 2 of them makes it look nice. You have to be design-minded, of course. And let's see, let's just drop. Oh, hey. One of these, there should be like a center symmetry thing here. This is going to be awful, but yeah, whatever. This thing with this extended, if you just threw this into an orbit, well, that's a satellite. That's basically all you need. That's the basic satellite. Now I usually either put one of these, the smallest tanks, and one of the either one of the really small engines, or maybe even one of the, like these, the 30 kilonewton thrust things. But let's put one of the small ones. So now we actually have something that we could adjust our orbit with, and that is a good idea. You should always have something. You could actually get away with using RCS for this, and so if you had perhaps just a couple of these, like 2 of these up here, that's enough to get enough thrust to do small changes to your orbits. This is a huge one, isn't it? No, this is the small ones. And this still looks kind of cool, right? You could actually, let's see here. You could get away with putting this stack decoupler, maybe not. Let's just get this in here, like this. Doesn't matter. Now, this thing, you could probably stick 4 of these on one-man launch. Just stick it on the side, maybe to one of the hubs, or just stick it on the side somewhere. And that would work. And that would actually get you your first satellite network. Now, this actually uses the better here. But these are actually enough, not for the geosynchronous orbit, but for the lower orbits. Now you have, this is the 16 version. You have this, the Communitron 32. This is actually enough for the geosync orbits without any of the dish antennas. And these are all omnidirectional antenna. And this uses almost actually 4 times as much. It's more expensive. Now, of course, this is not going to help you if you want to go to the moon. Then you need one of these, maybe. This is the 90,000 kilometer thing. This is more than enough to do the moon. And Minmus for that. Yeah, it should be more than enough to do Minmus too. You could, let's see, could also, if you have a look at these, the other ones here, the other dishes. So this one uses 1.6 charges a second, so you need more power. This one uses 1.8, but you can see the change here. This is 90,000 kilometers. This one is 60 million kilometers. This is actually enough to go to Duna. And then you have this 350 thing. This one could basically push a signal from probably from Kerbin and to Joule when they're on each side of the system. And this thing is 400. This is basically, yeah, it is awesome. It takes 5 charges a second though, so both of these do actually. And if you're sending a couple of these out into, for example, Joule, you actually have to calculate that you will get less sunlight out there. So always pack more electricity than you need. Now there's one trick to actually get more out of your satellites here, and that's to put them into an inclined orbit. That makes it a bit harder to see actually, like, it makes it a bit harder to make sure that they're actually in range of each other. With these, I think you should be okay most times, but you might have to put some small directional antennas to make sure that you are actually in contact with different satellites, but you will get more sunlight, and that's actually a couple of extra satellites with more sunlight will probably give you better coverage if you still have the small and weak panels here, these guys. So yeah, that's actually the basics of how you make a satellite system. Now, again, we need to talk a bit about the directional antennas, because there's one more thing here, and that's the angle. So you can see you have, this one has a 25 degrees Kona angle, so it could actually, if you think of a 360 degree circle, it actually takes, or it actually spreads the signal at 25 degrees. So if you put one of these around Earth and point it to the moon, and then you put one on the moon on the surface that actually faces Kerbin and point it towards Kerbin, you should be able to get a signal without actually explicitly targeting each other. These, on the other hand, do need to have a target, direct target, and it's pretty easy to set up. We can actually have a quick look at that. Let's just put one of the reflectrons on it because we need to have that, and let's put one of the, let's put this big thing on it, and yeah, let's put it out there. Just have a look at the UI. Now, as in the diagram, you are going to get like connectivity lines between the different satellites, so it's pretty easy to keep track of all that stuff. This thing is a bit wobbly, that's okay. Just keep still, please, while I do this. And let's get the panels out. Hopefully you won't start bouncing around too much. That's kind of hypnotic, actually. Oh well, never mind. So right now, when we activate this is probably going to drain it, but let's target the mission control. It probably won't be able to because, well, yeah, it might actually from here. These don't like move at all, but they actually implicitly target physically what they need to target. Oh, this is going to go bad pretty soon. Let's activate it. Let's activate it. We can't, yeah, okay, now it's, okay, yeah, it's operational, I think, yeah. So 1.86 charges a second. Now, what happens when we get into the dark? We can simulate that by going like this, and I'm going to reset the, oh no, okay, yeah, that's fine. Let's just do this, and you can see the electricity is draining quickly. And since you're on a probe, very soon now you're going to reach this point, and then you really can't do anything. You're out of power. You're basically, you have dead satellites. Now, if the panels were extended, you wouldn't have that problem because you would start getting more power. But if your panels are not sufficient to power all the antennas, your satellite is going to die if you don't shut some of them down. And that's even when you're in maximal sun, because like this is 2 charges, this is 2 charges. If we had the biggest antenna on there, it would stop working. No matter what, it would just stop working because it takes more than it would get even in the sun. And when it's dead, it's dead. Even though your solar panels are extended, this will still keep pulling more. Alright, so let's have a look at more advanced designs here. Let's call it complex sat, and let's build a new, okay, yeah, of course, yeah, we don't care about the name really. So if you take one of the bigger probes, this is not the big probe, I think it's, yeah, it's this one. Let's take this one, the big probe. Maybe we'll put some like a girder segment on it or something. It's probably a good way to structure your thing here. Now we could make this a multi-satellite connectivity thing, like a long range. This could push signals out to multiple bodies, and it isn't that hard. So let's put one of the communitrons on. You always want to have one of these and one reflectron on the other side, just in case something goes wrong. So now you're basically covered when it comes to the Omni stuff. And oh, this one is actually quite cool. This is a high gain folding antenna. Doesn't matter. So this is the longest range thing we have. Now we could probably put a couple of these on here without any trouble. Did it go on crooked? No. Let's say we do something like this. Oh, you don't need to do that. Let's see, like this, right? Of course, this is going to be hard to actually get up there, but you might do some tricks and make that happen. And let's put one. Oh, it doesn't want one up there. That's fine. Let's twist this thing around, and we'll put some. I think we should probably, before we have a look at how this works, we should probably put some solar arrays. Now we have to start looking at the actual power needs again. So these are actually 18 per sec each. They might get a bit partially obstructed, so let's say efficiently 10. That's 40 units of power each, or total. And each of these actually take 5 and something, so this is 25 units of power, so we're good there. Problem is, when we need to recharge our batteries, since we don't have a real surplus of these, we are going to get into some problems. Now we could solve that pretty easily by just adding more solar, right? Right. So now we should be good on power. Now, if we're going to sustain 25 per second for example, let's say 2 hours on the bad side of the moon, that's a lot of power. Each of these are 400, and you would need, I'd say, guesstimates of let's see, is oh wow, that's actually a lot of power. You need, let's just say you need several tens of thousand units of power. Now if you push this into an inclined orbit, you should be able to get away with maybe 30 minutes of power loss, maybe even less, maybe 10 minutes if you put it into an almost polar, really high orbit. And that's probably your best bet for one of these long range thingies. Now you should be able to get away with just peppering this thing with, oh hey, come on, stop that. Alright, so could we get tons of these here, maybe? Yeah, and we could probably put like tons of these bad boys on there too. Let's put a couple down here. Okay, this is horribly unbalanced and everything, but this should be enough power to last for quite a while. Now, let's have a look at this thing. The Kerbal Engineering System is basically my favorite little helper thing, and I use it extensively. Because I like this thing. Let's see, main display, reference bodies, yeah. I need to see the mass, and then I need a small engine of some sort just to make it happen. Like just one of these and one of the small tanks. Right, so our mass now is 5 tons. Getting something like this up in orbit is hard, but the thing is, as long as this actually has a connection to this antenna, you have 5 long-range, really long-range antenna. You could set up, so 2 of them are Duna, 2 of them are Joule, for example. You might actually try to push 6 into here and get 2 of them going to Eve 2. And that would actually cover all your long-range needs. Now you would need a couple of these on the other side as well, and this would lose powers at some point, so getting 2 of these in orbit, in opposite polar orbits, then you are basically guaranteed that one of them can see the planet you want at all times. Then you have the possibility of going or sending to 5 different planetary bodies, and that's a win in my book. Having 2 of these in polar orbits, you're good. You could do a lot smaller than this, just have a couple of this, maybe just the top part here, like doing this. This should be more than enough to keep going and keep contact with 3 planets having 2 of these. And then you put 1 single or 2 single antenna, basically relays with the long range omni antennas in orbit around that body. You target them, you target the Kerbin ones to one of the Duna ones each, and the same way from Duna and back, and you can push a probe to Duna without any big problems. Now, the thing is, when you push a probe out to Duna, you would like to have one dedicated dish on the craft you send, the probe you send, and one back here, because if you want to do any adjustments on the way, you should be able to do that. You might have some short, like 10, 15, 20, maybe an hour long blackouts. That's not a big problem, because if your burn is 1 hour late on a 60-day trip, you're fine. So yeah, I think that's actually all you need to know to start doing your planetary relays, and you should be able to shoot a signal all the way to Joule with what you've learned here. So I wish you guys good luck, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.